Great. We have a bunch of people starting to join. Hi, Neil. Hi, Krista. Hi, Stevie. Good to see you. We have people starting to filter on. Meghna Agarwal, it's so nice to be in touch with you. I have been on your newsletter distribution list for the last few months, and I've really enjoyed reading them. So just know that I'm one of probably many people who gets a lot of deep enjoyment from all the work that you put into your newsletters. And what I have found is, during this pandemic is a new joy and interest in cooking, and out of necessity and also out of choice. And what I've really enjoyed from your personal sharing, your blogs and the way that you talk about food is a real passion and a real enjoyment. And so I thought it would be great to have you on today to talk about your connection with food, how we can all make our pandemic cooking more interesting, but also at the same time simple, because that's what we're all looking for, and talk about cultural connections to food also, because I think that's really important in carrying on traditions when we aren't living in the country of our family's origin, or we immigrated to a different country. Food is the currency and the way in which that we connect with that. And that was another reason that I really resonated with your content. So that's a long introduction, but thank you for being with me today.
No, thank you. Thank you for finding me. And I'm so glad you enjoyed the newsletter. It just started a couple of months ago with quarantine. And it's been so joyful to receive the responses like yours, because people just feel connected getting that. And it's something that's new for me, and I'm loving doing it. There's a lot of work that goes into it, but
I'm sure.
But it's fulfilling at the end of it.
Tell us, Meghna, a little bit about your journey with food. Have you been a foodie your whole life? Are you from a family of chefs, or is it something that you've developed? And I'm hoping it's the latter to give me some hope and some inspiration.
So I am not from a family of chefs, but I'm from a family of foodies. And as you know, when they say like Indian culture is obsessed with food,
Yeah.
It really is. When you're sick, you want food. When you're sad, you want food. When you're happy, you want food. Like it's, really surrounded by food. And that's how I grew up, with food all around me, but not cooking really. And I came to this country almost 20 years ago, and I didn't know how to cook. I literally didn't know how to cook or boil water even, because there's help in India, and
right.
it was something that I took for granted. But I had a very evolved palate. Like I knew what my food what I wanted to eat and what it's supposed to taste like.
Yeah.
And that's how my journey started. When I came here and I was like, okay, I can't eat takeout every day, and even what I eat is not tasting the way I want it to taste.
Right.
And it was expensive and unhealthy. And so I started cooking. I mean, that was my first reason for basically to feed myself. And I'm married to an Indian guy too, who's really into food. And he was still doing school, and we didn't have that much money. And so we were like, okay, we're going to cook at home. And so that's how I started. But then I realized I didn't know anybody here. I wasn't going to school here at that time. I wasn't working here at that time. And I was completely like thrown into this world without any connections in so many ways. And like you said, food was the only common currency. And that's how, and so I would literally invite people over that I'll cook for you when you come over, to build my community. But not as a business, not to go, I never thought that this would be a career path I would take. This was something that just organically grew, because when I had kids, and I had kids pretty early, I realized I didn't want to be in corporate. I wanted to have flexibility. I wanted to travel. I wanted to not be doing the 9 to 5. And at that point, I was entertaining a ton, having people over all the time anyways.
Yeah.
And so some of my friends from preschool, my parent friends from preschool, suggested, why don't I do this? And my first instinct was fear, because I don't have a culinary background. So I'm like, who's going to pay money And how am I going to get credibility for something I've not been trained for? So I donated it as a fundraiser for my kids' school.
Wow.
So I did like, these cooking classes, which is exactly what I do now, but I did it as a fundraiser.
Yeah.
Because that way there was no pressure on me, and it was supporting a good cause. And I was like, let's test it out. And
it's an experiment.
Yes. And it was a big success. It was like a big success. And I was in a tiny apartment at that time, and people came to my tiny kitchen, and they didn't care. They didn't care that I didn't have this, degree in culinary education, or I didn't have this fancy kitchen. It was the experience. It was this 4-5 hour experience where they cooked everything from scratch. And it was kind of less daunting for them not being in a commercial space, because they felt it was more doable and it was a real life, like what you would do. And I cook exactly the way you would cook in India. Like there's no changes in when I'm teaching. I'm just like, there's no shortcuts, there's no nothing. You cook the way you would eat at home in India. And I could show them a lot of my kitchen and all the different history and culture and stuff like that. So it was my way to build community and feel connected. And that's been 10 years now, and I've been doing it.
And that's amazing. And so now it's funny because fear is often our first reaction when we are trying to do something new and expand in new horizons. And then we have these breakthrough moments and these aha moments that, wow, I'm really good. And I have an audience, and that is so comforting and confidence building. So what have you done, Meghna, in the years, those 10 years, to develop into a business and become a businesswoman now, who also is a chef and loves cooking?
So I started really small, and it was all word of mouth and Yelp reviews that people would come, but it wasn't a viable business. Like I wasn't making any money out of it.
Yeah.
But then gradually I started teaching at all these different cooking schools, like the San Francisco Cooking School, the Civic Kitchen, all these different cooking schools in the city. I started teaching. So that gave me a little bit of credibility and confidence that people started recognizing my name. And then a friend of mine had his own startup. So I used to cater lunches to them. It was like a small 35-person startup. And that was just to get my feet wet and just to understand what it's really like. And because you have this vision of this very glamorous food business, and that kind of made it come to life and be like, okay, this is not what I want to do. Like catering on a regular basis, especially a one-man show, that was not gonna fly.
Right.
And then I would go back to India every year for the summer, because I would take my kids and spend the summer there, like 2 to 3 months. And I would learn from restaurateurs there. So I would go into the kitchens and, study or just work with them. And that gave me a lot of experience. Yeah. So it wasn't your traditional cooking school route or any of those, but just learning on the job sort of a thing. And I started very keenly observing my mom, my mother-in-law, my aunt, my grandmother, all of those people, because Indian mothers are the worst teachers in terms of cooking, because there's no measurement. There's no like,
that's right.
So just like,
a few shakes. My mother was like, few shakes. I'm like, how much is it?
Exactly.
Ruin it if it's just a few shakes.
And it would never taste the same.
Yeah,
and so then it was only when I started like observing them or taping them literally and be like, but you didn't tell me this. And they were like, oh, I mean, they didn't even realize.
I forgot about it.
So that's how it's grown, a little bit by bit. And I think this current like generation of lots of Indian immigrants and a lot of people who really value, like they want to spend money and time in their health and nutrition and are into Ayurveda or are into wanting to include different cuisines but have no clue how to. And those are the people who really started reaching out to me. And that's how it just grew and grew.
But word of mouth, word of mouth, and an avid customer base and technology, I imagine now is playing a big role.
I have knock on wood, good Yelp reviews. So that was, and being in the Bay Area, that was a big thing. Like Yelp is a big, dependency. So that helped, and just word of mouth.
So let's start cooking, and we can continue chatting. Meghna, what are you going to make for us? This is the first time I've kind of done a live cooking demo, so I'm going to take your lead. But we talked about cooking, and the reason is that we're all cooking a lot more. And I'm sick of ordering out, and I'm also sick of cooking. I'm sick of both, but we all need to eat. And so I asked Meghna to share with me an easy and tasty version of tofu. And so tell us a little bit about it, and then we can continue chatting.
Yeah, so it's an Indian spin on scrambled eggs, basically. Okay. But instead of eggs, we're using tofu. You could use paneer or and I'm basically going to spice it up with a few spices and some onions and ginger, fresh ginger and chilies. And it's going to be really simple. And you can have it with toast. You can have it with roti or bread, or you can have it with dal and rice and that. So it's really versatile. It's really simple. You don't need too many spices. So we can get right into it. So I'm going to change so you can see me cooking it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So this is like a really beat up Indian pot, and I deliberately use this just because it's a traditional Indian pot. It's like an Indian wok, basically. It's called a karhai, and I'm just going to add some oil to it. You can add ghee, you can add butter, you could add coconut oil, whatever you fancy, anything to coat the base of the pot. And once that's hot, you're going to add whole cumin seeds. So not powdered, whole cumin seeds, until they pop and crackle.
What is the difference, Meghna, between the whole and the ground cumin? What is the difference in taste or experience there?
So the whole, first of all, the ground will burn when it comes in direct contact with the fat. It's much easier to burn, and it's a lot more potent. Whole is very subtle, and it'll just give you a hint of that flavor. But it's not going to be taking over the dish. So you can't replace whole with ground. So if I added, let's say you had ground cumin, which most people here have ground cumin, I would rather skip it than use it right now.
Okay.
So, and I'm going to cook like my mom, so eyeball things, but I can give you all exact recipes with measurements if you need.
As you're going, just let us know how much approximately how much you're
so it's like a half a teaspoon of cumin seeds. And if you can see, I'm going to get closer, it's a little bit, you can see it bubble up a little bit, and you want it to really just get toasty or darker or fragrant, any of those. And then we are going to add to it some ginger, freshly chopped ginger, some freshly chopped chilies, and you can skip the chilies if you don't want it spicy, and onions. So those three things.
How much of those are you putting in there?
So I'm adding an onion, one medium-sized onion, chopped, around a teaspoon of freshly chopped ginger, and 2 Thai chilies chopped up with the seeds and everything. You're just cutting it up into small pieces.
Okay.
So I'm still, can you all hear it crackle?
Yeah.
So that's your sign. That's your sign that, it's ready. And you have to be careful at this point that you don't burn it. It's easy to burn too. So you don't want to burn it. So that's my onion. Red onions are preferred over white and yellow, but if it's not a deal breaker. If you don't find it, then you can do white or yellow. So that's around 1 medium onion. And then there's the ginger. And ginger powder is not the same thing as fresh ginger. So don't use ginger powder. It's super strong and you don't want to use it. And then there's green chilies. And even people who are afraid of chilies, I would tell them decrease the amount if you need to, but it adds a lot more than just heat. So there's this weird kind of freshness and heat. And so I would recommend trying a little bit, even if you're afraid of it. And so I'm just going to saute it a little bit till it's like translucent or soft. And then we'll add tomatoes. So we'll add around 2 tomatoes to this.
How much ginger have you put in there?
A teaspoon.
Okay.
And this is all for 1 box of tofu. That one tofu thing.
And did you get the soft or the firm?
You could get any. I got the firm. I didn't get extra firm. I got firm, but you could get really any. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
And you could do the same thing with eggs.
Okay. Yeah.
So you could totally just replace the tofu with eggs or paneer, and it will work really well.
What surprises you, Meghna, when you do these classes? A lot of people think of Indian food and they think, oh, it's just chicken tikka masala and it's too spicy or too hot. I mean, what do you notice of people's ideas of Indian food when they cook with you?
They're surprised. First, they're surprised because they think, like, really, we didn't use that. It's not that spicy.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't that hard necessarily. And it tastes good. Like, when they see it cooking, they're like, really, is this going to taste good? And then I'm always like telling them, just hang on. Yeah. And they're surprised how much they like it. And they're surprised that all the vegetables are so flavorful and so much lighter than when you would get it at a restaurant.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so if you... Sorry. Just look at the color. So you'll see it's browning a little bit. And, it's not as raw looking as when we started off. Yeah. So that's our clue to add in the tomatoes. So I'm adding 2 tomatoes chopped up. And you could use, let's say you didn't have tomatoes and you wanted to use canned tomatoes, that would work too.
Okay.
This is a pretty versatile recipe, and there's no you can't do this or can't do that.
And pretty simple. It's just cumin, ginger, and the
chili,
the green pepper, and the chili and tomato onion. That's pretty simple.
Yeah. And you could also add bell peppers. That's something you could add too.
Yeah.
And now the important part is the spices. So, does anyone recognize the spice? I'm going to add it, and then you'll tell me if you recognize it, and then I'll tell you what it is.
That looks like haldi. That looks like turmeric. Yeah.
Yes. So turmeric. So around a teaspoon of turmeric, which is the bright orange yellow spice that is very trendy at the moment. And then half a teaspoon of chili powder. That's something you can customize as per your needs. If you don't want it spicy, you can even skip it. And then 2 teaspoons of coriander powder. So does anyone know what the leafy version of coriander is?
It's the cilantro.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it tastes really different, and they're not replaceable. So don't use one for the other.
Okay.
So we have coriander, turmeric, and chili powder in this at the moment.
I bet that smells really good too.
It smells really good. And then we're going to add a generous amount of salt. And here, I'm going to get the salt. And then we're going to wait for all this to kind of cook down a little bit, for the tomatoes to get smushy and soft before we add the tofu in. And this is exactly what you would do if you changed up paneer or eggs or any of that stuff.
So you can make scrambled eggs. You could put paneer in it.
You could do any of those, yes. Okay.
Just whatever you have lying around the house. And this is definitely flavorful, easy, and would make everybody happy at the dinner table.
Correct. And if you look at this right now, so this is a reaction I would get in my class. See the bottom of the pot? It's dry and it feels like it's going to burn. And people would be like, do we need to add more fat? Do we need to add water? Do we, so that's something that always scares them. And I always tell them, no, you don't.
Okay.
And that's what surprises them at the end, that how did this turn out with not adding too much liquid or any of that stuff. Okay.
It's almost kind of like a paste. It's turning into like a paste there. Yeah.
Exactly. That which is what we're looking for. And now you can just add tofu, just crumble tofu. You can just crumble it with your hands or with a fork. And so I'm just literally crumbling it while I'm adding it.
And it has moisture in it, so it's probably it's
softer. I've drained the water, but it's still, tofu tends to be still pretty fragile. And at this point, you're going to drop the heat to like medium, medium low, and you're going to mix this stuff. And that's pretty much it. We'll cook it for a little bit more. And in the end, we're going to chop it with cilantro, if you like cilantro. And that's going to be your dish.
And I know you have 2 boys, Meghna. Do they eat everything that you make? How do you, or do they protest like my kids?
So my boys, they do eat 95% of what I make. They protest if there's too much Indian food. So it's like, I have to change it up. I have to change it up, meaning I can't, like I grew up eating Indian food every single day and I'm happy to do it, but they can't. I mean, they can, but they don't want to.
They don't want to, yeah.
So they'll be like, can you make something different? And which is what I do then. So we'll eat Indian maybe 3 times a week. And we will then eat, whatever else, mac and cheese and Spanish and Italian and whatever not. But the key to my boys eating the food, what I made was I didn't give them a choice. I literally didn't cook anything different. And that was also because I just didn't have the bandwidth. I could not, it used to drive me crazy cooking 2 different meals.
Yeah.
So I would just cook what I did. And I would tell my pediatrician so many times, I'm like, they don't eat this. And they were like, it takes 10 times for them to try anything. And so I would just keep offering it. And they eventually started eating it. And even now, like they're teenagers and I see them, things that I would eat and they wouldn't eat. Now it's changing. Like they see us eating it and they'll be like, oh, how is it that it's so tasty for them? And so they'll give it a try. So they're still evolving, but for the most part, they eat whatever we eat. They travel with us and they order what we order. So it's a big blessing in that way.
Yeah, and that constant exposure makes a big difference. And that's our only job. We can't force them to eat, but we can choose what's on the table.
Absolutely, yes.
And who do you admire, Meghna, in the cooking space? Like, where do you get inspiration from? Where can we get inspiration from if we're looking for something new right now?
There is so many. I cannot name one person. There of course the people who are the well-known chefs, and they are there. But there's also these unknown everyday people who are just creating all these different unique dishes, and I find them on Instagram or on social media, and they are really so creative and they're making the best of the current situation and doing wonderful things. And it's admirable just watching them and seeing them grow and seeing how much creativity there is, whether it's Indian food or non-Indian food or any kind of different things. There's so much out there that I feel like I just don't have the time to even want to be able to try a lot of the things that I would like to.
That looks delicious. You want to do a little close-up or plate it for us when it's ready?
Yes,
So
yes. And I'm going to add cilantro to it.
Yeah.
In a second. And then I'll plate it and I'll show it to y'all.
How often do you spend cooking? I mean, on an average night, I mean, what's a reasonable amount of time for cooking, like, you know, a tasty Indian dish? Can every dish be like this? I mean, are there
No,
enough to make it
I
fast?
would no, I would say like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
For a like I made dinner today for my family, and I didn't have that much time. So I was like, okay, I assigned myself like 45 minutes, and I'm not cooking an elaborate like 5 different dishes. I'm just cooking one main dish with some side, and that's pretty much it. And I think 45 minutes, maybe an hour, but you don't need more than that for regular meals. Then of course there's the elaborate cooking, and that takes hours and hours. Okay, so I have this in a little plate that I'm going to show y'all.
Oh, that looks really good.
So this is what,
yeah.
And you can serve this with, like I said, with bread and rice and dal or anything.
Yeah, it looks delicious. It looks flavorful, and I mean that literally took less than 10 minutes. So that's amazing. That's amazing. Thanks. And what do you call that? What is your name for that?
Like a tofu scramble.
And tell everyone how we can find you, we can learn more about you, and follow your recipes.
Yes, so you can go to my company's name is Crimson Kitchen. So you can find me at crimsonkitchen.com. My Instagram handle is the same, Crimson Kitchen. You can subscribe to my newsletter. I send out videos almost every week and recipes that you can find and follow. And if you ever have questions, you can always DM me, and I'm happy to respond.
I enjoy, like I said, I subscribe to your newsletter, and I've really enjoyed learning about food and the history, and you write about biryanis, but also the magnificence of cauliflower, like really simple things. So there's something in it for everybody. And I know you also teach online classes too. Tell us a little bit about that as we wrap up.
Yeah, so since COVID, all my in-person classes disappeared, and I don't know how long this is going to last. And so after a few months, I decided to pivot to online classes, and which I've been doing, and they've been going pretty well. And it's shorter, like a shorter time frame, like 2 hours, but it's been, people are from all over the world can join, so it opens it up for a lot more people and a wider audience, which has been great. And I'm doing a lot of team building events and cooking for the cooking schools as well. So it's been really fun. It's been easy. And I send out like grocery lists and ingredient lists beforehand. And I also have ingredient kits you can purchase if you're in the Bay Area, and resources where you could buy the stuff and, have all of that ready. So you can, in 2 hours, you have a full elaborate Indian meal ready for you and your family.
Yeah, and a good date night if you wanted to.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of people doing that for date nights too.
Yeah, date night or a girls' night out, or I've had like moms and daughters in different parts of the world do it. Like a common activity to do together, which has been really fun. So it's still, I'm trying to build that sense of community, even though we're not together.
Yeah.
It's been really the silver lining to all this.
Yeah, absolutely. Meghna, thank you so much for that cooking demo, and thank you for what you're putting out there and connecting me to my culture and making it more accessible and easy to understand. So thank you for that. crimsonkitchen.com is where you can find her and learn more about Meghna and everything she has to offer. Sign up for her newsletters. Thank you very much. It was nice meeting you, and I look forward to taking one of your classes one day. You can.
Thank you, Shibani. Thank you for organizing all of this.
All right. Thank you.
Right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.